Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
If you're a general dentist, I have a question for you. How much should you produce on average per day? And how does that measure up? Are you underproducing, about average, or doing real well? Well, to answer that question, we first need to ask another. How much should a general dentist be producing per day? And that's what we're going to talk about in this week's episode of Dental Business RX. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And I'm joined this week by Chris Menkhaus. Now, Chris is the Director of Practical Implementation at MGE. To give you an idea of Chris's background, Chris is in charge of all the coaching at MGE. He manages our power client managers, and any type of coaching or implementation that you would get as an MGE client or assistance with that you'd get as an MGE client would have Chris would be connected to it. Chris is in charge of everybody in that department. Chris also has been in the dental industry for over 20 years, and he's run multiple multi-doctor offices. As a matter of fact, the first one he built up to over $6 million a year, and the doctor owner did not have to be on site. So I'll be joined by Chris here shortly. Or Chris, are you all hooked up over there?
I'm all hooked up. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Chris, welcome.
Thank you
for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the question. How much should a general dentist produce per day?
You know, bread and butter dentistry, I would say between $3,000 and $7,000.
Okay, so
right.
now, when you say bread and butter dentistry, what do you mean?
I mean, no molar endo, not doing implants, your basic crown and bridge, composites, simple extractions, maybe a little bit of ortho, like Invisalign or fast braces, something like that, but not like, where you're doing $40,000 and $50,000 cases.
Okay. So I'm not doing all on 4s or 6s or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Those change dramatically.
Now that 3 to 7,000 range, does that take into account fee structures and stuff like this?
Yeah, it would be fee structure. It would be the speed of the clinician, of course.
Sure.
It would be what insurances you're participating with. And, certainly a mitigating factor is also the doctor's own personal philosophy.
Okay.
In terms of what is the best thing for the patient.
When you say this is what they should be producing per day, you're not talking about the office. You're talking about that doctor chair side.
Yeah, that doctor chair side. Exactly.
Okay. So
exactly.
You say $3,000 to $7,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you're talking to a client, you're looking at their circumstances to determine whether they're underproducing or overproducing.
Absolutely. Yeah. You look at what they can do versus what they're currently doing. What are their treatment plan opportunities? How many hygiene checks are they doing an hour, assuming they have a hygienist, or are they doing their own hygiene? God forbid, right? Those are all.
Well, yesterday I found out that one of our clients is paying, sorry to interrupt, but one of our clients is paying in Southern California $60 an hour for a hygienist.
Yeah.
And some of the ones they interviewed wanted $65 to $70.
Yeah.
So there may be more people doing their own hygiene listening than you could possibly imagine. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, different podcast, but certainly a subject worth addressing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3,000 to 7,000. So let's say I'm one of those docs doing all the the more advanced procedures. How does that work out?
Well, then I think you're looking at, and again, it's so much variable, but let's say 10 to 40 a day.
10 to 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, that 40 is high. 40
Okay.
is very high. But, we certainly have clients who do that on a pretty regular basis. It's just,
Right.
but if you're doing that, you're probably also marketing your specialty very heavily, right? And that is usually, like you said, all on 4s or, large whole mouth cases. That's not usually, because I'm doing that much crown and bridge.
Right. So, that would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, so let's say I'm out there and I'm listening, right?
Yeah.
Well, first off, before I ask you this question, is there any other mitigating factors you would add into this so let's say I'm listening and I'm wondering, am I underproducing? Am I overproducing? Or not, we wouldn't overproduce, but am I underproducing or am I below average? Would there be any other factors I should take into account?
Yeah. The whole office is so symbiotic. It's hard to say that there's no other factors, but I would say given proper administrative support, and a reasonable schedule.
Okay.
That I think you're pretty, like, a reasonable business hours. I think we're pretty good.
Okay. So let me play this forward from a math perspective, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm doing an average, you said 3,000 to 7,000. So what's the midpoint between that? About 5.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say we pick 5. I'm in an average area. I'm not in an area with real low fees. I'm not in Manhattan or LA or something like that.
Sure.
So I should be doing myself as the doctor about $5,000 a day.
Yeah.
Let's say I work 17 days a month. So what is that? About 85,000 a month, excuse me, should be coming out of my chairs.
Yeah.
And then you add hygiene on top of that. Let's say we're doing 30 in hygiene. So we should be doing about 110, 115 a month. Pretty solid, stable, without a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's say I'm listening to this right now and I'm not. I'm doing maybe 40 a month or less. I'm producing below average, or I feel like I'm producing below average. What do I do about that?
Well, the first thing is you need to look at, are you actually selling treatment?
Okay.
Right? Because, if you're not, and, look, sales is such a bad, whether you can say educating, you can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's the nature of our industry. I'm not saying I'm happy about it, but if you want to get people healthy, you have to be able to sell. It's just a non-negotiable. And, generally you don't produce it because you didn't sell it.
Sure.
Right. Sure. And that's pretty much where it starts and ends. And, if I want to increase my production, then I'm also, of course, going to have to increase my sales.
Right. And I don't know if this is, I'm sure you have the similar viewpoint to me in the sense that if I know what I'm doing in selling, that 25 minutes I spent presenting 6 crowns to a patient, if I know what I'm doing, let's say I don't know what I'm doing, they accept 2 this year because that's what insurance is going to pay for, 2 next year and the year after. And of course, when you come back to them next year, they go, I thought we did those. Right. Yeah. But then if I know what I'm doing, that 25 minutes can turn into 6 crowns this year.
Right.
Yeah. So then obviously that's going to have an impact on my production.
Huge.
Yeah. Any other points you would say that I would need to correct if I wanted to raise this average?
Yeah. So, the next thing is just really, and it goes hand in hand with sales, is having time to actually do treatment plan. You just said it, having 25 minutes where necessary to sell a case. You look at that first and foremost, that's how you're getting the patient healthy. But if I spread out even at 2 crowns, what is that? 2 crowns per visit. That's probably 6 visits at least,
right.
Whereas if I do all 6 crowns at once where it's clinically feasible, 2 visits,
right.
It's just that efficiency and of course getting the patient healthy. So having time to do that, I see that so often where, we see that so often where, the doctor will say, I don't have time to sell. Well, it's like, I don't have time to get the patient healthy. Look, very few people come here in the dental profession that actually like to sell.
Sure.
But if you can't do it, and then the next thing is having the time, it's giving it its due importance, and just put yourself in the patient's chair. If I, okay, this is my health. It took me 2 years to get the courage to come in and see you. And you're busy with a patient, so you're just going to tell me, come back next week for a consult or whatever. Which, if you don't have time, of course, that is the right thing to do, but build time in.
Right.
And you won't do that as much, And so having time to present is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get into more production, right?
Okay.
And like the mechanics of that. So you want to have an assistant. Most offices, I would say an assistant for each chair.
Okay.
You want to have them up to speed or get them up to speed to do everything that legally they can do in your city or state.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I would say it's funny, but like assigned to a chair, it's very, very rare that we see a GP operate efficiently out of more than 2 chairs.
Okay.
And usually when they're operating out of 3 or 4, we see them producing way under capacity.
Okay.
And also not having time for hygiene checks, right? So be really efficient out of those 2 chairs. And, again, if you have an ortho day, like let's say you are a big Invisalign or fast braces guy, great. Have an ortho day where you see, but in the main, it just gets, when you get spread thin, it just becomes disorganized. And you're working out of 4 chairs because you're making up for inefficiency and bad scheduling versus because you really need to.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. And then like I said, and you can do it out of one chair. We do have clients that do remarkable numbers out of one chair.
Right.
I mean, we had a client who had one doctor chair and one hygiene chair. Not ideal, but he had, went through tons of red tape to add the third chair. But this guy consistently working, a under 40-hour week schedule, was doing 130, 140 a month. And this guy was an area that most people would consider low income.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, the Upper West Side of Manhattan or something like that.
No,
right?
no, it was definitely a low income area.
Okay.
And prior to beginning with us, he was a full Medicaid office.
Got it.
Right. And he was doing this not taking Medicaid.
Got it.
Right. So but super efficient scheduling.
Got it.
The other thing that you want to have in place is a scheduling system.
Mm-hmm.
More important than what the system is that you have one. You have to have some agreement, some policy on how this is going to roll out. And the more production you want to do, the better the scheduling system has to be. The more efficient it has to be.
It's funny because one of the things, obviously, I do we do the MGE the sales seminars. We just call them the sales seminars. But I'm one of the major speakers, the main speakers, and I like to survey. And I'm surprised. And you probably see this because you're talking to these individuals directly, these doctors, but at how many people don't have a system to actually run their office schedule.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go, how many people put primary time in the morning and, maybe with newer clients, 10% of the hands go up.
Yep.
They just put it wherever there's time.
Yeah.
So they're doing, 4 or 5 unit cases, at 6 at night, they're starting.
Yes.
But I was surprised. It seems like that was a thing years back. People had more of a system.
Yeah.
And now it's just not as prevalent. That's why I think obviously we put our clients on a system, but it's just not as prevalent as it used to be.
It's so true. Yeah. It's more, and it's not a great trend where, you see the doctors are, I don't know, for lack of a better way to say it, very overworked and underpaid. Right. And it becomes not a great patient experience because it with the advent of with the increased amount of insurances plus corporate coming in as well.
Right.
It's just you find yourself needing to be high volume.
Right.
Right. Or feeling, it's not true, but you feel like you have, for lack of a system, lack of some of the other things we talked about, like sales or time to sell, you feel like you need to be that high volume doctor. And it's not great for the doctor in the office, and it's not the best thing for the patient in most cases.
Probably not. Yeah. I would imagine it wouldn't feel great as a patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we got, so far we got what? We got sales, we got dental assistant, we've got not operating out of more than 2 rooms. That's interesting. And then this last, having a scheduling system. Any other points you would have incorrect?
Yeah, just and then the assistants, Jeff. And just making sure that you have assistants that really can, in a perfect world, you'd have one assigned to each chair.
Okay.
And they would be gotten up to be able to do everything that that you need them to be able to do so that your time is efficient.
Okay.
If they can make temporaries in your state, they should be making temporaries.
Got it.
If they can't, that's okay. Let's get them up to that. Cause I know sometimes, different offices will let the assistants do different things, and also different dental assisting schools. The standards are very different. Right. So sometimes you get somebody who can do all that, and sometimes they have to learn all that.
Right. So, and then so you want them to max out by whatever their Dental Practice Act says they can do. You want them to max out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So now we've got what our average should be as a practitioner. What do I do to fix, if I'm underproducing? How would you apply this? So let's say I'm applying this to an associate relationship. And as far as what relationship we're talking about, because I know that the whole production doctor thing would get into a whole other thing, which, I think it was a couple episodes back, we talked about how much you should pay an associate. Right. Yeah. And in that, I went into the different types of associate setups, traditional model, the production doctor model. Let's talk about the traditional model for a second. I'm a owner doctor. I'm getting busy. I bring in an associate doctor because, I want to have someone who does the emergencies, the kids, the endo, and is on call. Right.
Sure.
And I'll build the office, and they're going to come in, whether it's a new grad, they want me as a mentor or whatever. What should this individual be producing?
It's a great question. And my disclaimer on this would be, this, you want to have like an integration period.
Okay.
And, meaning just like you would with any other new hire.
Okay.
Right. And
so they got to ramp up. They're not going to come in day one and light it up.
yeah. And we would normally highly recommend that you would have actually the doctor work with you on patients for a few days to a week or two so that, you see, and it's a very common practice, but you see how they work, they see how you work, and you can make sure that clinically we're going to be consistent.
Okay.
And our chairside manager is going to be consistent. And, it's kind of a red flag when someone's not willing to do that, right?
So now, do me a favor. You mind me breaking that down? Because that's kind of a newer idea.
Yeah.
All right. So you're saying, again, we're taking the example. I'm the owner doc. I've hired this new associate. Let's say they're 1 or 2 years out of school.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're listening and you hear a slight, what sounds like a jet engine, that actually is a jet engine going overhead.
Yeah.
There's also, I'm in Florida. We have an AC running. So, give us a break here on that one. Otherwise, we're in Florida. Okay. Yeah. So I've just brought in this doctor who's been out 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
You're saying that I would actually have them work. So I'm prepping crowns on a patient. What is this doctor going to do while I'm prepping those crowns?
He's assisting me, and you would be almost I drill, you fill, and then turnabout, right? And look, it's in the presentation with the associate dentist.
Well, if you don't mind. So let's clarify this. So you're saying, right? Because again, this is a newer idea. In the sense that, we're working together on this patient. There's no assistant in this room.
That's right.
It's just, so he or she is being my assistant. Now, would we ever turn that about? Would we ever have the associate work and I would assist the doctor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's in the presentation. If I say, hey, I don't totally trust your dentistry, and so I want to watch you do this. It's not really where we're coming from when we do that, and it's not usually a great icebreaker, right?
Got it.
So it's usually like you just tell them the truth. Like, listen, it's very important that the practice has consistent chairside, consistent clinical. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do is work together for a few days. You see how I work, I see how you work, and and make sure that it's compatible, right? Mm-hmm. And that you see chairside, and also it's a great way to introduce the doctor to patients. Right. So it's not like, hey, this is Dr. Sue and she's going to be working on you today. Bye. Have fun. Yeah. It's more like, hey, this is Dr. Sue. Have you met her? Listen, she's awesome. You're going to love her. And she's already, worked on some of us. She's great. So she's going to be working with me today on you. And good news, no extra charge for the second doc. Right. Wow. And we just go right into it. And usually that, and then, you want to take it on a gradient. But now listen, they come in all clinical sizes and shapes. So you might do that, and after a day or two go like, wow.
Yeah, this person really knows their stuff.
And has great chairside. And so away they go. I have a couple of associates that are still with practices that are giant producers. When I say like, the associate's doing 150 and selling treatment, even 200. And one of the guys did this for 3 months.
So they worked
as a new grad. Yeah.
So they were a new grad.
Yeah.
They worked together on patients for 3 months.
Almost 3 months. Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe occasionally was turned loose on a composite, but on their own. But it was it's that integration process. And really in the first, so this is the long answer to your question of like, what do we expect?
It's great data. I mean, this is great data because I've heard this before. I've talked to clients about this before, but I've not really heard this industry wide as a concept. And I know that we've had a lot of clients do it very successfully.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're talking about it.
Good. And it's a 90-day, I would want to see in the first 90 days, I'm not so concerned what the associate is producing, but how much more is the office collecting and producing because of the associate's presence? Because look, if I have an associate working with me, then now I should be a little bit more freed up. Even if they're helping me with a patient, like I could step out, have a little more time to sell that case, or maybe it works out to move something over and start major treatment sooner or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then within 90 days, I'd like them to normally be at least $3,000 a day.
All right. So now once after that 90-day period, assuming this isn't somebody who just came, who's been out for 8 years and they're placing implants left and right. We're talking about the average associate I'm hiring. So after 90 days, I want to see this person doing at least $3,000 a day.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so now my expectations have kind of gone to where we started the show.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah. And, it's also, you just, as an owner doctor, you're almost always going to be faster.
Sure.
and better than the associate in terms of better at sales, I should say. Right. And so, and I know this isn't about associates, but I would just say if I'm having them do 2 hygiene checks an hour, $3,000 might be a tough ask.
Got it.
It's an integration process. And we have, again, one of our most successful clients, just texted me today, actually collected $100,000 yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Most of the associates work out of one chair.
Okay.
They have one chair. And they have one chair of hygiene that they do hygiene checks on. And so it's very, which might sound like overkill, but you know what? It can be done efficiently. It just depends on your needs.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's another good podcast we could do in the sense, because we do a lot of the scheduling seminar too.
Yeah, that's true.
In the sense of, because you see guys out of 4 or 5. I'm in 4 chairs. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well done. But it's not really showing up in the production.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're wearing out a pair of rollerblades every week.
Right.
At home between chairs.
All right, good. Well, I think that pretty well answers it straight up. That was awesome. This is where, if you had an audience, you'd have people with questions now. But obviously, if you do have questions for Chris, you can always email Chris at Chris. Is it Chris or Christopher M?
Chris M.
Chris M, CHRISM at mgeonline.com. We'll put his email link on the episode page. And obviously, if you ever want to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com. Or contact us at 800-640-1140. If you want to know more about the sales and communication seminars we were talking about, we'll also put the link on the episode webpage. But here's what I challenge you to do. If you're listening out there, and Chris, I'm gonna invite them to contact you. So I hope that's okay.
It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're out there and you're wondering, because as Chris mentioned, there are a lot of variables. If you're practicing in Biloxi, Mississippi, your fee schedule is going to be different than somebody who's in Tribeca in Manhattan. Right?
Yeah.
So you may not really know if you're under or over, I keep saying under and over as a form of, language, but it's really, nobody's really overproducing, I think.
No.
Okay. But you're underproducing. But if you want to know where do you stand, how do you measure up, I'd recommend you email Chris, and Chris can kind of give you a quick assessment if you'd be okay with that, Chris.
I would love to hear from him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, have a great week. And well, first off, Chris, thanks for joining us today again. Super appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
Okay, good. Guys, have a great week, and we will see you at the next episode.